Welcome to my new video. My name is Björn Friedrich and today I'm here to talk with you about a very, very important but also controversial topic. And that's the question, does Sport BJJ work in self-defense situation, or in general, how you train Jiu-Jitsu for self-defense? And whenever this discussion comes up in the internet, you know, there are two sides. One people say, hey, self-defense needs special training and you don't have to train with all the rules and you should train with all the rules. And the other side says, you know what, if you can tap out and you can choke out experienced trained fighters, then self-defense is easy. And so today I want to talk about exactly this topic, and I will give you some ideas and explain what in my opinion is very important and is needed if you want to train for self-defense, if you want to train Jiu-Jitsu for self-defense. First of all, I think Jiu-Jitsu has an amazing potential for self-defense. And the reason for this is very, very simple. The reason for this is in BJJ, it's all about two things: controlling and distance management. What I mean by that, in Jiu-Jitsu you learn how to control someone's hands, how to control someone's body, how to control someone's neck, how to twist and move someone's limbs. And also you learn how to create distance, how to escape from someone who is bear hugging you or who is choking you or who is trying to twist your extremities. So you learn how to control, and of course you learn how to get out of situations where someone is trying to control you. And these two basic skills are very, very important for self-defense. And from this perspective, I would say Jiu-Jitsu has the potential to be the core for self-defense. Because if you can control people, but people can't control you, then you have a good chance of, like I said, controlling the chaos. That's the title of my video series, but that isn't a serious title because I think fighting is chaos, usually. And you know, if it's a self-defense situation, there are no rules. And when there are no rules, it's completely chaos. And the ability to control things, to control bodies, to control people, to control hands, is the ability to get control in a chaotic situation, which is very important. And on the other hand, if you are able to escape certain grips and certain chokes and certain hugs, that's very, very important. And that will help you to create distance, to have access to your own maybe weapons, or to escape. You can escape, run away, or whatever. So these two things are very, very important. And I would encourage everyone who wants to learn self-defense to start with Jiu-Jitsu, to learn how to move bodies, to learn how to twist limbs, to learn how to clinch, to learn how to control the wrist, to learn how to position your head so someone cannot grab you. You know, classical grappling stuff in standing up and on the ground. That's the foundation, in my opinion. And so if you ask me, hey, what about Sport Jiu-Jitsu? Basically, if you start grappling or Sport Jiu-Jitsu, no gi, whatever, the basic stuff is very good. It's a great start teaching you, assuming that you train Jiu-Jitsu standing and on the ground, assuming that you're training clinch, that you're training distance management, stuff like that. But I will come to this later. But if you train Jiu-Jitsu in a balanced way, that means stand up and on the ground, it doesn't matter which rule set you have, the core abilities of controlling distance and controlling people are very, very good assets when it comes to a street fight. The difference, and that's something you have to understand, the difference between sport grappling and self-defense grappling is not the quality. Of course, it's the quality of your opponents. You know, a blue belt or a purple belt or a brown belt is mostly much better than an untrained fighter. But what you have to understand is in a sportive situation, the risk you have is a triangle choke. The risk you have is an armbar. The risk you have is a leg lock. That's what your opponents in the gym will do. And they're skilled with that, and that's very dangerous. Because on the street, people are not skilled with these techniques. But on the street, someone is pulling a knife. Someone is biting you. Someone is pulling a gun. Someone's friend comes in and kicks your head. You know, very different risks. Very different risks than the risks you have on the mat. Yes, like I said, the core abilities of controlling distance and controlling people, they are important. But you have to change the strategy. You have to change, you know, the risk assessment. There are different risks. You know, for example, the classical clinch body lock. If you just clinch someone with a body lock, in sport, in MMA, in grappling, that's awesome. Get a body lock, get him down, you know. And if you can't do this with someone who's training jiu-jitsu for 3 or 4 or 5 years, that's amazing. And you will not have problems doing that on the street. You will take everyone down, usually, if it's not a trained fighter. The problem is, you grab his hip, his hands are free, he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a knife and stabs you. So, you know, skill-wise, you are much better, but you were not prepared for the different risks. So, in order to be successful in self-defense, you have to bring your sport skills, like I said, the skill of control and the skill of controlling distance and controlling your opponent, and you have to take this skill and you have to work with the different risks. What is a different risk? You know, when you do the body lock, for example, in sport jiu-jitsu, it's all about controlling the body. In self-defense, it's not just about controlling the body, it's about controlling the body and controlling the hands. Because if you don't control the hands, the risk of getting stabbed or whatever is there. So, you know, you use the same abilities, but you use them for different goals. You don't use them for just a takedown, but you're using them for controlling the body, controlling the hands, making sure he will not reach into his pocket or in your pocket, and then you take him down. You know, that could be difficult because there are more than one goal, but that is what you have to do, you know. Like I said, the opponents are maybe easier in a street fight. The risk is complex and bigger, and therefore situations are maybe not that easy to handle. Because you have to take care of all these circumstances of the knife in his hand, maybe he wants to bite you, you know, stuff like that. So it is important, if, in my opinion, if you want to be good in self-defense, I'm just talking physically here, just talking about fighting skills. Psychologically, we talk later. So if you want to be good in self-defense, yes, do your grappling, do your stand-up grappling, do your wrestling, do your jiu-jitsu. Do your sport fighting. That's perfect. Do your punch defense on the ground. Do your punch defense standing up. Train MMA. That's all amazing. And then take these skills and look for the risks you have to encounter. You know, train in a way that he cannot bite you. Train in a way he cannot reach into his pocket, grab a knife and stab you. Train in a way that you can take him down and he cannot hold you down while you take him down. Because when he can hold you down, and you cannot get up, the second person comes in and maybe kick your head. So you have to take the guy down in a different way because you do not want to get controlled from him. You have to learn how to take someone down without touching your knees on the ground, because then you would shatter or injure your kneecap. So you need to learn different takedowns. You know, you cannot focus on using double legs or something where you put your knee on the ground. You know, and when you do, for example, a kimura and you go north-south, you know, he can bite your balls, he can bite your leg, you know, if you don't control his face and his jaw. You know, you may be laughing, you know, but if you ever doubt that biting happens, just ask a police officer. They will tell you biting happens a lot. And biting itself is not a big thing. But if you get not just a bite, but if you get an infection, you know, or a disease from the biting, you know, or the wound is infected, and that could be a big thing. I don't want to have, someone biting my leg and putting his teeth into my blood and my flesh, So, that's something you want to, if you can, you want to prevent. Even on the ground, if you take someone down and you control him, like I said before, like in standing up, you need to control the guy on the ground, but you need to control not just his body, but his hands. Because he can maybe reach into his pocket, pull out a knife and stab you. He can maybe reach in your pocket and pull out something from your own pocket and can stab you or whatever. So these risks are very different from the risks you encounter in the sportive role. However, the sportive role is the environment that will give you the attributes. So sport jiu-jitsu, training in a sportive way, is a great way to get the timing, the sport-specific strengths, the balance, the feeling, the experience of grappling. All these technical aspects are greatly developed in sport jiu-jitsu because you have skilled opponents trying to do this on you and you're trying to do that on them, and that's a great way to sharpen your skills. However, the next step would be to change the rules, to say, okay, now let's see if someone has a knife in his pocket. Let's see if someone is trying to bite me. Let's see if I take someone down, can I get up when a second person comes in? Stuff like that. That's the next step you have to train, and you have to keep in your mind when you do things. You have to understand what is a sportive application and what is for self-defense. And you sharpen your skills with sport, but the strategic part and the real technical strategic application for self-defense specific things, you have to train extra. You have to train, like I said, with all these different goals in your mind. That is a very, very important thing. And next thing, and very important thing, is mostly, I shouldn't say mostly, but a lot of martial arts, and I think jiu-jitsu is the same. There are qualities needed for self-defense that you're not learning in jiu-jitsu. And I'm not talking here John Wick style fighting skills, equalizer style fighting skills. I'm not talking about this. But what we have to understand is that self-defense is not Hollywood. We are not like John Wick or the Equalizer. We are humans and we want basically to avoid fights. And what is the best way to avoid a fight? The best way to avoid a fight is not being there. I always say if I see someone first, I can decide if he sees me. In other words, if you walk down with your iPhone, walk down the street and you just watch your iPhone and there are some guys, looking at you and you don't realize them and then they attack you, that's something you could have maybe avoided if you have good awareness. But good awareness is something you do not learn in jiu-jitsu. Good awareness is something you have to make a decision in your life and to put that into practice in your life. It's a life skill, it's a psychological skill, a mental skill, and that's something you don't learn in jiu-jitsu or any other martial arts. So, for example, awareness of your surroundings is, in my opinion, one of the most important skills you can develop. If we talk about self-defense, if you ask me what is the best thing I can do for self-defense, then I would say it's awareness. It's not being there when someone wants to attack you. It's to purposely avoiding people who let your spider senses tingling, When you feel uneasy in a situation, you walk down the street, you see some guys and you feel uneasy about that and you change direction. And that's maybe the best thing you can do for self-defense. But that's not something you learn in jiu-jitsu. That's something you learn by thinking about it, by practicing it in your life. So another very important skill is communication. If someone is talking to you and it's this ego thing, confrontation, and if you have good conversation skills and if you can talk in a de-escalating way, that can solve a lot of problems. But if you are like, hey, let's go, if you are like that, you will trigger a lot of fights that wouldn't happen if you could talk with the people. But again, talking with someone, de-escalation is something usually you're not learning, in jiu-jitsu or any other martial arts. So that's something, you know, awareness and proper language and body language is something you don't learn. But that's important if you want to train self-defense, you know. For example, another thing which is in my opinion very important and which keeps you honest is to work with a blade. Why? Because working with a blade, I mean, fighting, defending against the blade, fighting with a blade against another guy with a blade, stuff like that. That keeps you very honest. That keeps you very humble, you know, and you will get a very different understanding for speed, time, distance, awareness also, because you will see that things can be very, very dangerous in a very, very quick pace. Things can escalate quickly, and the knife is very quick. And that keeps you humble and maybe let you rethink the way you train jiu-jitsu. So I always just can encourage you, if you want to train self-defense, put a knife in your training and work with it passively, defensively, but also actively to understand the risk, you know. And in I don't know how it is in the US, but in Germany, knife is a problem, you know. Knife attacks are problems and they happen frequently. And so it's very important to put that risk into your training. So in a short, compact form, what you should do, first of all, train jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, grappling with resisting opponents, with aliveness. Get your sparring, get your skills in this sport. And then take your sport skills and understand what are the threats in a street fight, in a self-defense situation, and then adapt your skills against specific self-defense situations, against threats from self-defense situations, like I said before, you know. That's a very important point. Another point is if you train jiu-jitsu only on the ground or grappling only on the ground, then you're done. You know, very simple. You know, and everything I said before about your grappling skills, if you don't train standing up, if you only roll on the ground, forget about it. Forget about it, you know. It's like, it's not self-defense in any way. It's absolutely not self-defense because, you know, someone said most fights end up on the ground, and maybe a lot of fights end up on the ground. Yes, but basically all fights start standing, and you know, one punch changed everything. And trust me, if you have no stand-up skills, if you have never trained punch defense, if you have never trained clinch, if you have never trained takedowns, nothing will save you. None of your ground techniques will save you from getting punched in the face. So if you train jiu-jitsu and if you train it or part of your training is for self-defense reasons, then of course train stand-up, train wrestling, especially freestyle Greco-Roman, or train jiu-jitsu with people who train stand-up, punch defense, distance management, clinch, stuff like that. If you don't train that, you know, there are no self-defense skills. That's a very, very important point. So like I said, if you train jiu-jitsu, stand up and on the ground, if you put time in to enhance your psychological mental skills, like awareness, like communication, de-escalation, if you put time into this, that's a very, very good asset. And if you have time, do some knife training. You know, and when, you know, I'm not talking about guns here because in most countries, I mean, not in the US, but where I live in Europe, there's no gun. You know, you cannot wear a gun. You know, it's not legal, and the chances you can wear a gun legally are almost zero. So that's why I'm not talking about this topic, because, you know, it's something we can't do here. So, like I said, jiu-jitsu, stand up and on the ground, specific training for self-defense goals, knife training. Maybe not that much, but at least every few weeks to get a feeling for it, and training for specific goals, like, you know, prevent someone from grabbing into his pocket, prevent someone from grabbing into your pocket, prevent someone when you take him down from holding you down, stuff like that. You know, get up quickly if a second person comes into play. So these things, if you can adapt your skills to these things, then you will have a very, very good package of self-defense skills. You know, don't forget, self-defense is always dangerous. There are no guarantees and it's not Hollywood. So like I said before, if you can avoid it, avoid it. If you have to run away, you know. And it's funny, people always say, whenever it comes to self-defense, people say, oh yeah, I use my self-defense techniques, but I run when someone has a knife. You know, that's funny because people think they can make a decision. Oh, this guy has no weapon, now I fight. Oh, this guy has a knife, oh, I'm running. The reality is, you don't see the knife. You think the guy has no weapon, and you may go, you know, into an ego fight, and then he pulls a knife and stabs you. Or another guy has a knife, or he has a hidden knife behind or something like that. So, you know, in my opinion, always expect a knife and base your decisions on these expectations. In other words, don't risk a fight because you think the guy has no weapon. That's stupid. That's absolutely stupid, you know. Never risk a fight. Always think the guy is very dangerous. He can have a knife. He might have a gun. Avoid the fight at all costs. There are situations where you can't avoid it, but otherwise avoid it because things can escalate quick and weapons can come into play, and that's no joke at all. You know, that's a very important point, and I think that's something you should always keep in mind. Stay humble, stay aware, and yeah, that's what I can say about it. In my opinion, to finish this video, in my opinion, self-defense is a very important part of Jiu-Jitsu history. And for me, self-defense was the reason I started Jiu-Jitsu 27 years ago. And that's why it has always a place in my training. And I feel that's the way I teach my students. I teach self-defense first. And then, you know, depending on the person, if there's an older guy who just have no aspirations of doing a tournament, then he stays with his self-defense stuff. And if you have young guys, you know, they want to go in tournaments, they want to go into the sport, teach them sport. Both is great. I love both. I train sport a lot, no-gi, you know, but I also train self-defense a lot, you know, and I think both, you know, has its place in Jiu-Jitsu, and it's not something against each other, you know. It's not like, oh, these guys are training sport and these guys are training self-defense. That's not the way it is. Self-defense is great and you have to learn it. Sport is great and you have to learn it. Can you combine both? In my opinion, you do the best. You know, there's nothing better you can do for your self-defense skills than combining the strategies for self-defense with the attributes from sport jiu-jitsu. If you can do this, that's the best thing you can do. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, please don't forget, subscribe my YouTube channel, give us a like, check out my video series at bjjfanatics.com, and if you want to support my channel and you're looking for great MMA or BJJ gear, check out xmartial.com. With the coupon code Björn Friedrich, you will get 10% off your order and you are supporting our channel. Thank you very much and see you next time.